Islam, Shalom, Hola, Aloha, Bonjour, Assalamu Alaikum. Osio, this is your brother Zach Bay, Indigenous American Moor, coming to you live and in full effect. Thank you for joining me once again. Like, share, subscribe to my channel, interact with my content by leaving a comment down below. Hit the notification bell if you'd like to be notified whenever I'm dropping new content. Thank you very much. I appreciate your viewership. Let's jump into it. Today, I want to do a video on a what if, the what if topics. What if this, what if that? And the what if I'm thinking about is time travel. Would you travel forward or would you travel backwards in time? What would you do if you had that ability? And to operate along with it, the ability to operate in that time period plainly, meaning you know the language of the region, you blend in with the people of the region, like you pretty much don't stick out. You don't have your modern clothing or anything like that. So you're able to blend in with that area, that time period, that region, forwards, future or past, pretty much. So that will go along with it. So therefore, no butterflies get stepped on. I mean, except the ones that you want. All right. So it makes me think about the Marvel Loki series. How there's like a time girl who patrol timelines and try to keep a singular timeline. But if you have watched that series or are familiar with that concept of like the multiverse, how the original timeline split and splintered into multiple timelines. All right, they haven't really got to the conclusion of that, but just watching that series made me think about a topic like this. Like what would I do if I was in a situation like that, or if I had that type of ability? Just a little mental exercise. It also reminds me of a series. I believe it's an Amazon series called Kindred. I want to say it's like a Prime series, but it's definitely called Kindred, where this girl is able to like go back in time in her ancestry and kind of like manipulate the past. But she also went back to get her mother who disappeared, who somehow had that same exact gift in the bloodline, but she was trapped in time in the past. So if you've never seen that series, check it out. It's called Kindred. Very, very intriguing. Very, I like it. I like the concept of that show. It seems, pretty cool. But yeah, it's sort of like a mixture of that with the Loki series. So like, if I could travel in time, would I go forward or would I go backward? And honestly, I might take a glimpse at the future just in order to prepare, but a lot of the things I would like to do will actually go back in time in order to better the present that we have now. And I believe that will have a more positive future than what we have now, So I say the first person I would go back and save, this might throw you, but I have a list of a few people that I would actually go back and save, not just events or stuff that I would do personally, but it's actually people I want to interact with in that time period. And honestly, it's mostly people who were killed before their time, people who died before their time, people who are going to make a change for the betterment. And I'm going to say Samson. That's the first one. The biblical Samson, the brother with the long locks who fell victim to a woman who was placed in his face, Delilah. And she cut the brother's hair and he lost his God-given strength. But the Most High gave him the strength like Herculean strength, you know what I'm saying? Like that strength you can only get from the Most High, that supernatural strength he gave him. But the stipulation to that is he must never cut his hair off. All right, so that makes me think about like Rastas and a lot of indigenous tribes here in America, like I know for a fact Cherokee, we don't believe in like cutting our hair and stuff like that. And if you study the Prophet Noble Ali, some of his teachings, he also warns against the cutting of one's like facial hair and like head hair, pretty much, because if you know a little bit of the science behind it and the spiritual aspects of it, and in indigenous cultures, we actually have a spiritual connection to our hair, and it gives us a spiritual and almost supernatural connection to the earth, different frequencies, and it makes me think about how during World War One or World War Two, that indigenous soldiers who joined the military were able to like blend in and use tracking skills that they were only able to harness that power if their hair was long. But if they cut their hair off, they noticed that those same exact indigenous soldiers would easily be found. They weren't as connected. They wouldn't blend in with the environment as much. But it was a very interesting story that relates to that. Like a highly decorated group of, let's say, like Navy SEALs were tasked to track this indigenous American soldier who was telling them about the history and the spiritual aspect of the hair. And these highly trained Navy SEALs were always a step or two behind this indigenous person who was out in the woods, and who was always able to stay like just a step ahead of them. They would always find like a campsite that has just been, left and stuff like that, but they were not able to track and locate and capture him. But that's what they were tasked with. They were tasked to go out into the forest with all their modern equipment and gear, and their ability to work as a team, and they cannot catch this one indigenous brother who was out there in the woods, this warrior who was telling them that we're connected to this land, and we can connect to frequencies and stuff like that. So first person on this list was Samson, the biblical Samson. Definitely say that brother, make sure he was able to use his strength in the way God willed him to use his strength, and so his days would have been long upon this earth. Next, of course, I would have to say the Prophet Noble Ali, because he was unjustly captured and then fell ill from the treatments that he received when he was captured. He was taken pretty much like hostage by the American government, the police, the justice system, stuff like that, the legal system or whatever. So they say he died from complications of like pneumonia after he was released from their custody. So I'm sure he was probably in horrible conditions. I'm guessing they might have physically assaulted, beat him, trying to break his spirit or break his will. And they said that he passed away from complications after that, which is very, very concerning. I believe there's more to that story for sure. You can look into more of that information on your own, if I left anything out in that regards. But definitely go back and save the Prophet Noble Ali. Make sure he stayed healthy, stayed safe, stayed free, and his days upon this earth were not cut short before the due time. But he did still accomplish great works in the time that he was here, inshallah. Next, I would say the good brother Al-Haz Malik El-Shabazz, also known as Malcolm X. I would have went up in there, warned the good brother that they was coming, even though I'm sure he knew that they were after him. And all the information that's coming out recently, that those Muslim brothers did not take him out from the Nation of Islam, that it was most likely government agencies and conspiracies and things of that nature, and the passing of his daughter inside of her own home mysteriously. when she was seeking justice for him. So I would, if I was able to go back in time and affect, that this time period and timeline, I actually saving this brother. I definitely would go back and do that to make sure that his days were not cut short. Next, it will be the good brother Martin Luther King, because Malcolm, or El Hazmalik El Shabazz, he was taken out before Martin. So I believe they had to do it in that order, because if Dr. King was targeted first, Brother Shabazz would have been even on a higher alert, and he would have had even more to speak about on how the powers that be took out Martin after he started speaking on leading his people into a burning building, and things of that nature, leading us astray. When he started making speeches on that, how he may have led us in the wrong direction with the non-violence movement, which he got from Mahatma Gandhi, who was also very bigoted toward our people. He was very bigoted toward the Moors, the so-called untouchables of Hindustan, of India, and of other Moors of darker complexion around the world. So that's where MLK actually got his nonviolent movement. But toward the end of his life, he was saying how he may have led us astray, that he's been to the top of the mountain and he's seen everything. Pretty much a Masonic code that he spoke when he was speaking on that, and he was taken out because of it, because he was going off the script that was laid out for him. And even in this day and age, we can see certain people placed into the spotlight or put in front of everyone's face, who are playing characters from a script, from a plan that has been laid out, and they're tasked with leading us in that direction by being an actor, whether good or bad actor, in order to lead us upon that line, So after MLK, I will warn and save the good brother Fred Hampton of the Black Panther Party. He was ambushed. He was drugged, I believe. He was drugged and ambushed that night, and the police came. Policy enforcers came to raid and to murder him. They raided and murdered him while he was, unconscious in the bed. And he was unable to live out, his legacy and the glory that he was here to do. His days were cut short upon this earth. So I would definitely go back and save this brother to make sure he was able to accomplish more than what he did in this current, in the timeline that we're in, in what we know as reality. Also, I would save JFK, because this brother was actually exposing. If you go back and listen to John F. Kennedy's speeches on secret societies and secret orders running things, he was talking about like the shadow government pulling strings and puppeteering behind the scenes, controlling the financial systems of governments all over the world. And if you control the money of a nation, you can control anything and everything in that nation. You can control all the people who are in there, politicians alike. So when JFK was speaking on, pulling the veil and exposing these secret orders and societies, and actually trying to help the Black Panther Party and the disenfranchised people in this nation. Uh, you know, he was taken out. He was trying to do something very positive for this nation, for this country, and he was taken out, which is another reason why this political atmosphere, the election coming up, Donald Trump and RFK are both banded together, which is like very, very historical. If if you're into that type of information, if you're paying attention to the political atmosphere that's going on right now, very, very historical stuff. I will also go back and say Lincoln, President Lincoln, from being assassinated. I know he wasn't perfect, but I know for a fact he was Melangian, so he knew. He also knew who the Moors were. So the fact that he did, help free the enslaved people here with the Emancipation Proclamation, changing not 100% free, but changing the form of like what chattel slavery is, and actually, and then he was going to uphold that field order that was given, like the 40 acres and a mule. A lot of that stuff was a lot of the advantages and the benefits that our people would have gotten during that time period if he had stayed in office. I believe would have been smoother. It wouldn't have been as much resistance, and a lot of the legislation, pardon me, the backpedaling that went on during that time period, the whole like Reconstruction and getting everything back, the reformation of the Union. I believe it would have been a lot more favorable to us personally. I don't believe all that land would have went back to the southern owners of that, the southern owners of that land who fought against the federal government during that time. I don't think that land would have gone back to them, and our people wouldn't have been forced into like the sharecropper life, and being sharecroppers and like serfs upon our own land, and we would have actually been given more land freely, not necessarily freely because we actually fought and bled for it, but it wouldn't have been given to people who actually fought against the current government at the time, and in order for them to be able to get themselves back on their feet. So I believe Lincoln, if he had been alive during that time period, it would have been a little bit better for us versus being as negative as it became after his passing. That's like the main reason. I will also say, very, very important, I would go back and honestly, I would save Yahshua the Christ, also known as Jesus. I'll go back and save Jesus, bro. You know what I'm saying? No doubt, because if you know about like the biblical story of what happened during the crucifixion and how Rome was speaking to the masses, and it always makes me sick how it seems like that, like the mob mentality always ruled out. Voices were silenced because the crowds and the mob were screaming something incredibly barbaric or ignorant, so it's like the ignorant voices were so loud, and it drowned out anybody who was speaking sensibly, and anybody who people were afraid. A lot of people were afraid to stand up and be like a beacon above others. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I believe back then when all that was going on, and how the story goes, the Romans yelled, "Who should go free? Either this man, Jesus, Yeshua, whether he should go free, or another man who was like a murderer, convicted, and like for some reason the crowd screamed for the murderer to go free instead of letting the Christ free. You know what I'm saying? Instead of letting Yahshua free, and then they proceeded to carry out their form of justice, which was crucifixion, like public torture, and eventually a slow death. So, if I could go back and I would be in a mob of a whole bunch of ignorant people, I'm not sure. I don't care if I gotta slap some ignorant people for them to shut up in order for me for my righteous voice to be risen. You know what I'm saying? Like people screaming ignorant stuff, sometimes they just need to be silenced, honestly. Because ignorance, it's almost like an infection or plague that spreads incredibly fast. And a lot of that comes from, sometimes it comes from fear, and mostly it comes from a misunderstanding. And is a good chance that it also comes from a malice. And I believe that's what mostly took hold. A spiritual malice took hold of that mob and that crowd, and they were all swayed emotionally into freeing somebody who was a criminal versus freeing somebody who had done nothing wrong, just because the voices of dissent, the voices of negativity and ignorance were loud enough to sway, to sway the mob. No righteous voice was raised loud enough in order to silence those foolish, ignorant voices in order to free this man. And I would like to believe that I will be able to raise my voice high enough, loud enough, and have enough righteousness in my words to actually, make a difference. You know what I'm saying? Maybe I'm thinking too highly of myself, but if you ever seen that historical reenactment in films that showed the biblical crucifixion of the Christ and what happened leading up to that, how Peter had how Peter had like 3 chances to actually try to save him, how Christ was like, you're gonna rebuke me 3 times, and then that's when the crow was gonna, or the raven is gonna make its call or whatever, stuff like that. I'm just like, wow. So I think back of if so much greatness happened from his death and his passing, and he was able to redeem all of mankind. If that's how the story goes, if he was able to redeem all of mankind by sacrificing himself for us, for sin, and then, people often don't know this part, but then descend down into hell and free all those righteous souls. Because if you know the stories, it said that pretty much everyone on earth who ever existed from the days of Adam and Eve all the way up until Yahshua the Christ passed and redeemed everyone, it's pretty much everyone went to hell. Pretty much that's how the story goes. No one was righteous enough to live the life that the Most High had created, and everyone fell into sin and temptation. Everyone. No one was perfect, and everyone's soul was damned to hell before the passing of Yahshua the Christ. If you know the stories and the biblical aspect of it, that's how it goes. No one was righteous enough, so every soul went to hell. Everybody. But then during his passing, when he sacrificed himself, he descended into hell and freed all of those righteous souls and freed them into heaven, and then came back to earth. I believe it was 3 days. After those 3 days, came back and visited, his disciples and things of that nature, just to show that he had transcended this plane, and then went to heaven. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of like a very, very soft breakdown of like what happened during those events. And I'm like, wow, if he was able to show us all that through his death, what would he have been able to show us if he had lived all his days long? You know what I'm saying? Like if he had lived 700 years like King Solomon or something like that. You know what I'm talking about? If he had lived all his days upon this earth and he was all able to bring all the righteousness he was supposed to bring and redeem us being alive instead of redeeming us through his death, I'm just like, hey man, how would this world be? But you know, Satan and all his forces were able to sway the crowd and sway the people, and his days were cut short upon this earth. Yeah, that one was a little bit deeper, but that was one of the most important ones. You know, the Prophet Noble Ali saving Yahshua the Christ, saving Al-Hazmi El Shabazz, MLK, Samson, Fred Hampton, JFK saving Lincoln. You know, last but not least, I would say I would actually, and this is more modern, I'll actually go back and save the good brother Kevin Samuels. You know, I believe he was taken out because of the good works that he was doing, trying to actually help prepare our family and let our people know where they're going wrong and that they were being led astray by modern psychological warfare and manipulation tactics through, you know, ephemism and wild stuff like that. So yeah, the good brother Kevin Samuels, hey, I go back and save this, bro. Whatever, you know, popping up, being like, hey, that broad that you about to invite back, nah, don't invite her back, man. Spend a few nights alone, you know what I'm saying? Matter of fact, cool down on the Red Bull, you know what I'm saying? Make sure you're taking care of yourself, you know what I'm saying? Make sure you go to the doctor, get a checkup. So therefore, it will at least be a record to show that his health was decent, as far as them trying to say that, oh, it was a combination of heart complications and medication and like the Red Bull he was drinking and stuff like that. It was a combination of that, which led to his death. I think that's a little too suspicious, personally, because he was doing a lot of good things. He was starting to reach into Hollywood, and his message to this day has still not left the internet. What he was trying to do had entertainment qualities to it, but of course you have to have some entertainment qualities to you in order to be popular in this day and age, in order to even get eyes, to get views on you. So once you're able to get those views and those eyes, you can really start pushing the message that you really want to push. And you know, from him giving guidance to men, young and old, and then to him starting to talk to the women of our community specifically, and even, you know, talking about women of other communities, you know. So his approach into making our community better by holding up a mirror to us, I think was very important, and I believe he was taken out for it because he was making waves. So if I was able to, this is my what if I was able to, you know, time travel. You know, these are some of the people I think notably that I would go back and save. As an honorable mention, I will also say I will go back and save Nikola Tesla, because he died penniless. None of his inventions really got out into the mainstream, and his journal went missing after he died, things of that nature. People say that Donald Trump's uncle, had access to that in that time period. But you know, that's a video for a whole nother story. That's a whole nother story for another video. Thank you for joining me once again. This is your brother Zach Bay. Peace.